All right, we're back with Mom, Miracle Mom, and I teased earlier in the earlier segment that we would. Earlier, we talked about Mom's favorite miracle from the Old Testament. That's the parting of the Red Sea. But here's one that seems miraculous and is used even today. David and Goliath. It's an improbable event that people use to describe improbable events that happen even today. Do you recall the story of David and Goliath, Mom?
Basically, very, very basically, without reading it again. Once again, I'm not really sure about the whole story behind it, but obviously how David slew Goliath. We know that.
What were what were the circumstances? Why did this happen? Why was David even given the opportunity, or what was happening at the time?
You'll have to explain that because without my reading it all again,
All right.
I,
So,
I wouldn't get it
quick background.
properly. Yeah,
Uh,
had to
these
do with enemies.
Yes. Do you know which particular enemies?
Was it the Philistines?
Correct. So Goliath was a Philistine,
Yeah.
and at the time, the Israelites had been in the Promised Land now for several generations. This is sometime after the parting of the Red Sea, and they had been there for a while where there wasn't a king. The Israelites, God was their king, and they had a temple in the wilderness before they entered the Promised Land. God, said make a temple, and it was a tent, it was a tabernacle where God was the center. There was a priesthood, and so the priests were kind of the not only the religious leaders, but kind of the judicial leaders. They were the kind of the law, the ones who were telling everybody what to do. But God raised up judges to to deliver the Israelites in times of oppression from their enemies. But then the Israelites were a little. Uh, they looked at the nations around them and they said, "Well, these nations have kings. Why don't we just have a king? It's easier to see a guy and have him tell us rather than trusting the high priest going into the holy of holies once a year and coming out and then following all these laws. Why don't we just have a man that we can follow around?" So God acquiesces, I guess, is to the complaining of the Israelites, and so King Saul is chosen as the first king of Israel. And King Saul, has an army, and they live in a land where they have enemies, and these are hostile enemies wanting to take over their territory, etc. And it's an age old. Well, we won't go into that, but here's a case where the Israelites are on one side of the hill, or there's a valley like in between them. The Israelites are on one side, and the Philistines are on the other side, and they're looking at each other, going, "This is gonna be a bloody, bloody battle. Both of us are gonna lose, you know, untold numbers of men, and that's our livelihood. The men are the farmers, the men are the craftsmen, and it's the lifeblood of our culture, and war is just devastating to everyone." And the Philistines are like, "Well, I'm reading into a lot of this. It's not, the Bible doesn't go into all these details, but the Philistines are like, well, how about this? We send down our champion and you send down your champion, and whoever wins becomes the servants or the slaves of the other. Basically, let's not let's not go to war here. Let's just settle this with a man on man." And so they send down Goliath, and he's this giant, and some say he was 9.5 feet tall, but he may have been like 7 feet tall. I mean, it's not out of the norm. But some say he was a descendant of another race, the Nephilim. That's a whole argument. Was there another species of half
Oh
human,
yeah,
half
giants.
right?
The
And
giants.
so he's referred to as a Nephilim, and he had brothers that were all giants as well. So we won't get into that. There's plenty of controversy around what that is, but needless to say, Goliath was this mighty, intimidating, opposing figure. And he comes down and he says his speech or whatever. He shouts, he taunts. And I don't know how long this goes on, but at the time, David, he's the youngest of, I think, 7 brothers. I don't see. I'm betraying my ignorance here, but David was the youngest. He's the son of Jesse, and all his older brothers are in the army, and they're all at the front line, and they're all kind of sitting there. And David's back tending the sheep. His father's business is, he's got a bunch of sheep, and he's got to leave somebody in charge. So David's back there tending the sheep, and he comes and delivers lunch to his brothers. Basically, he packs up, a bunch of food, and he brings it to his brothers on the front lines just at the time when Goliath steps down to do his daily taunt. Come on, you Israelites, you chickens, send somebody. And David's like, what's going on here? What is this about? And he hears all the rumors. It's like, yeah, this guy apparently, the Philistines, if we send somebody that can beat this guy up, then we win, and that's that. And David's like, okay. And even the king said, whoever in the army steps up, that he'll King Saul, he'll give that guy one of his daughters in marriage. In other words, the guy who takes on Goliath gets to become royalty, right? He gets to become a son-in-law of the king. And David's like, okay, so what's...
Saul was the king, right?
Saul was the king. And so David's like, all right, so what's the deal? Why not? Who's going to do it? And everybody's like, not me. So you want to pick up the story there? What happens?
You mean when David slew Goliath?
Yeah.
Well, Goliath, of course, taunted him, told him, what do you think you're going to do? I've got a sword and you've got a stone, and, what do you think how this is going to turn out, basically. But, David said something to Goliath before he threw the stone. And to me, this was the source of the miracle. He said to Goliath, I do remember this part, that you might have a sword, but I'm coming to you in the name of the Lord Almighty. And that was where his power was. Goliath didn't understand that, of course.
Right.
But to me, obviously, he was coming in the name of the Lord Almighty.
And you know what Goliath said? Like, he sees this kid. Do you remember anything that Goliath said?
Oh, when he taunted him back.
He said something like, you send me this dog to come fight me with sticks and stones or something like that. So he's...
Well, yeah, he mocked him.
Yeah.
Made fun of him. And mocking didn't work. So, all David had was a sling and a stone and no sword. He let that stone fly.
Mm-hmm.
That stone was infused with the power of God Almighty. So he destroyed Goliath and cut off his head.
And the rest is history, right?
The rest is history. And then the Philistines, the good part is the Philistines, these enemies, are watching this happen. And all it took, they saw this happen, and what did they do? They ran away. Oh.
All right, so that's this basic story of David and Goliath. But I don't think that was the miracle.
Okay.
So the
miracle came afterwards.
No, I think the miracle did happen. There's an event that happened that I think is miraculous, an event that I think that part of the story that was not miraculous. So I had this I don't know if it's an epiphany or yeah, I guess it's an epiphany. So I was at a hockey game with some friends, the LA Kings. So we went to the professional hockey game, and I'm sitting there with my friends and watching these guys skate around on the ice. And the Kings scored a goal at one point, and then they replay it, and they in super slow motion. It's really effective. They have the camera trained on this hockey puck, and in super slow motion, it's just barely drifting across the frame. It's like in the air. It's one of those goals that was in the air. It wasn't on the ice, so you can see the puck drifting past all these arms and legs and sticks, and just slowly drifting across. And because of the slow motion and the frame rate, everybody else looks like they're standing still, and this puck is just it's flying through the air right into the net. And I realized that for a professional hockey player, there's a percentage of goals when they're absolutely certain they're about to score. Like some goals are just it bounces off, they slap it towards the net and it's a luck shot, or it bounces in and the
Yeah.
probabilities are high. But there's a certain percentage of time when that particular hockey player is so good, he's so in control of his stick and that puck, and he's so laser focused on that net, watching all the movement going by, and he knows when that opening is going to appear, and he's 100%, 99.999% certain that he's scoring. And so there's a percentage of scores that the guy who's scoring knows he's about to score. And so that's that small opening comes, and he can flip that puck up onto the stick and slap it into that hole, and he scores. And that hockey puck hit by a professional hockey player is a lethal weapon. There have been people who have died by
Yeah.
being hit in the head by a hockey puck. So I'm sitting
Right.
there at this hockey game thinking about that. That puck is essentially a bullet. I hear a cat.
I'm submitting sound effects today.
Sound design, extra sound design, to distract. No. So when I realized that this hockey player is so skilled with the stick and the puck that he could kill a person with that puck,
Oh, yeah.
I thought about David. And he's a shepherd, and it says he was out there, he was there tending the sheep, and he had killed lions and bears.
Bears. Yeah.
And what with what?
With,
A sling.
with stones. Yeah.
So I envisioned David for years with that sling, with nothing to do, sitting out on the hillside saying, I better practice. Maybe finding a tree and a spot on the tree, and I'm just gonna aim at that spot, and I'm gonna step further away. I'm gonna step further away. It gets better and better and better with this sling. It's not like he never used a sling. He just, how am I gonna kill that guy? Here's something. I'll use a sling. No, his job was to defend the sheep. And I envision him, here comes a lion lumbering over the hill, and he's got to nail that lion in the head. He's got to knock it unconscious or kill it if possible. And he's done it. He's done it before. So he comes delivering lunch to his brothers, out on the front lines, and he sees a guy standing still. This giant of a man. He's got a helmet on his head with an opening in the face. If you've seen the ancient helmets,
Yeah.
it's like this opening in the face, and his brothers all say, "Well, we win if that guy dies, and it just takes one guy to go down there." And he's looking at this guy standing still, perfectly still, and he's like, "Really? All I got to do is take that guy out?" Okay. When David has taken out lions and bears in motion, I'm sure, and he gets to see an immobile target standing perfectly still, laughing at him, mocking him, I don't think there's a miracle there. I think David's like, this is easy. This is a piece
Yeah.
of cake. This guy's a goner. And he knocks Goliath unconscious and then kills him. And, he takes Goliath's own sword and cuts off his head. The miracle here, to me, is King Saul letting this little kid put the fate of his entire army in his hands.
Right.
Right? This little kid, Saul's like, well, why don't you put my armor on? David's like, your armor's too big. That I can't go down there with your armor. But it's King Saul trusting David. I think God moved on Saul's heart.
Yeah.
That's the miracle.
To pick him.
So that's my take on the story of David and Goliath. What do you think?
Well, I agree. It's very interesting. It's like that saying. David wasn't perfect, but God knew he was perfect for the job that needed to be done.
Right?
And Saul picked him. And here's a little shepherd boy who had been honing his skill. I don't know how old David was. He was just probably a teenager.
Yeah, he was a teenager
by that time. But I mean, he had spent all those years honing a skill.
Yeah, like you've seen a teenager that like been skateboarding since he was 4 years old, doing all these crazy flips. Yeah, a kid can just focus on one thing and get really spectacularly good. Some of the most impressive athletes are all in their teens.
Well, and as a nurse, I know if you're gonna sling a rock, at a giant who's wearing a helmet, it's got to be dead on, literally dead on the spot.
We had 5 stones. Like he picked 5 stones, and some say they were for Goliath's brothers, but it's probably like, if I miss with the first one, I'll probably get another couple shots at him.
Yeah, he was just making sure he had enough ammo for the job. Yeah, it is interesting.
So, even though
I always questioned that too. Why would Saul pick David when didn't Saul have an army of men, adult men that could have gone up against this Goliath?
Yep. And that's why that's the miracle to me. It's like nobody else had the cojones, the nerve to do it.
And they said no. I think part of that story, Saul solicited volunteers, and they all said, "No way.
Yep.
No, I'm not going to do it."
And David's like, "What? Come on, this is nothing."
Send me.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting.